Kinkle from the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Unit at the University of Technology, Sydney. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm standing on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. 2020. I mean, really, need I say more at this point? I think a lot of us are feeling really overwhelmed. What can one person do in the face of so many devastating manifestations of the power of climate change, or the worst economic crisis that most of us have ever lived through, or such rampant political malfeasance? I think when the problems are so big picture, it's actually really easy to check out. But that is the opposite of what we need right now. I recently came across a quotation from Jane Goodall, the primatologist, that just really struck me. She said, "You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." And I think we just so often think about doing nothing as somehow like a non-choice. It's a default, it's the vanilla, it's not really a positive change, but it's not really negative change. And that's just not really true. Doing nothing is a choice. It's a choice that empowers the status quo. And sometimes that's fine, right? Sometimes the situation's going along great. They do not need your intervention. You can sit back, enjoy the ride. I'm not really sure that 2020 is that year, though. Now, that's not to say that I think we all have to quit our day jobs or become full-time activists. I think the choices that we make and the impact that we want to have, again, that's going to look different from person to person. We have different priorities and we have different parameters about what's feasible in our lives. But we are making an impact every day, and we do have to choose what that looks like for us. So it's in acknowledgement of that principle, that UTS has created Find Your Impact, an interactive virtual experience. So now, from an ideation bot to find your co-founder speed dating to a chat with Malcolm Turnbull, let me tell you what, this place has everything. So let me tell you just a little bit more about what it is, who it's for, and what you can expect. So as I said, it is an online choose-your-own-adventure experience. So it's for people who are early-stage entrepreneurs or who aren't even really sure that they would call themselves entrepreneurs yet. It can be linear, but it doesn't have to be. We're not all coming in from the same starting point, and we don't all have the same next steps, so we don't all need the same kinds of support. I think the important thing is that you choose what you want to engage with. And with one exception, which we will come back to later, it's all online, it is on demand, it is ready when you are. So I'm going to give you the too long didn't read version right now, just in case this is the moment where you get epic Zoom fatigue or your late afternoon blood sugar just dips and you really need a snack. What is this about? It's about inspiration, right? You can be an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship can be a way of creating meaningful change in the world. It's about scaling and skills development. It's about making the biggest possible impact with the business that you have. It's about community. It's about connecting to people. And I think sort of overarching all of this, it's about making the Australia of 2021, 2022, and onward economically vibrant, economically inclusive, and thoughtful, right? Mindful. So that's sort of the big picture. And I think the other big point is that, again, at UTS, we know we can't tell you what that looks like for you. So fundamentally, unlike my talk, the experience is interactive. So this is really meant to be guided by you, really meant to be guided by the user. So that's your big picture. So let's zoom in a little bit more and talk about it in a little bit more detail. If this is a choose your own adventure, what are your options? Now, obviously, in the old choose your own adventure books, this would be the point where you would have to decide, are you going to follow the Yeti into the ice cave, or are you going to go back down along the creepy tunnel to the castle where you came from? Let me tell you what, these choices are even more exciting than that. Do you want to start with values? Do you want to start with problem solving? Do you want to start with growth? Do you want to figure out how you can connect to someone else who's already on their journey? So one path through this experience is about inspiration. And we think that values are a really central part of the inspiration process. And so we have a variety of different exercises to help you figure out what might be meaningful to you. So you can picture the world a year from now. What kinds of changes would you like to see? I'm pretty sure at this point we can all imagine some. You can think about the people you most admire. Think about times in your life when you were happiest, most fulfilled. What are those common threads? If you won the lottery, what would you do with that money? I mean, let's assume you take care of yourself and your family first. Great, fair enough. But now you've won like $400 million. What are you going to do with the rest? And those obviously aren't the only ways to figure out what's meaningful to you, but there's some good ones. And another one also that I heard recently that I think makes a lot of sense is to think where in your life you're most reliable, where you're most organized. Is it in your daily fitness regime, in your family Skype calls, in your cooking class, at your workplace? Because that tells you something about what you think is worthwhile. The place where you show up, that tells you something. So obviously, it's not all about values, though. Fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about problem solving. You see something in the world that doesn't work as well as it could. And you think of a way that you can solve that problem for somebody. So now, obviously, a smart business doesn't start by trying to reach everybody all at once. You have to figure out specifically what kind of problem are you trying to solve, and specifically, who's your target audience. So we have an online template that will help you problem solve how you're going to problem solve. We'll help you figure out what it is that you want to do, who you think your target audience is, and how you're going to connect with them. So maybe this sounds a little airy-fairy to you. You're not really sure how thinking about your values actually translates to like a real business. And I think for me, it's partly about thinking where your values, the values you want to embody in the world, and the problems you want to try to solve, thinking about where that overlap is. So let's just say that you start to think about where you've been happiest, most satisfied, and you realize that actually you're happiest when you travel. And if you won the lottery, you'd spend the next 12 months exploring the globe. It's reasonable to think that there are people who also find that valuable and meaningful. But there's a problem. We can't travel right now. So how might we make virtual travel meaningful? And so maybe that leads you to thinking about like virtual reality and a way to recreate the experience of being at overseas landmarks here in Sydney. So you walk across the Harbor Bridge, but by the time you get to the other side, you're actually in the experience of being on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And you don't end up in North Sydney, you end up in the Redwoods. Or maybe it's actually not about virtual reality for you. Maybe you come up with an AI algorithm that helps other people think about what is meaningful to them and what kind of change. I've gotten distracted by my slides now. You help other people think about what's meaningful to them, about connecting with other cultures, and you sort of box it up to them, right? So you send them maybe a little bit of food, you send them an authentic article of clothing and a foreign movie, and boom, it's sort of like travel in a box. And maybe you start to realize that it's not just about problem solving, it's actually about change. It's about, maybe you realize it's about democratizing travel, about making it more accessible to people who weren't able to afford to travel before or weren't physically able to. And you build not just a really successful business, but an impactful one. So fundamentally, right, entrepreneurship about solving problems, and it's a way of creating meaningful change. So that's sort of the inspiration path through this experience. I am going to keep messing around with my slides and hope that I finally get it right here. But look, maybe you're not here for inspiration. Maybe you've actually already got a really clear idea of what you want your business to be. And sure, maybe it's for purpose. Maybe it's super explicitly for profit. Great, fantastic. There's lots of ways to have impact. At UTS, we believe that one of the fundamental parts of getting out of the economic crisis caused by COVID-19 is going to be entrepreneurship. For decades, startups have created the most new jobs, and that's been even more true in a recession. I think there's actually a number of opportunities here. There was a report released last year about if Australia were to take proactive sort of proactively take on the challenge of automation and really start to adopt those new technologies, and realizing, of course, that automation is just one new technology coming down the pipeline, that we would be able to add between $1 to $4 trillion to our economy in the next 15 years. I mean, that's epic. And I think there's actually an even more particular opportunity for Australia because we've kind of been punching below our weight. There's a measure of economic complexity in economies that sort of tries to get at how much human intellect and human intervention had to go into creating economic value. So something you pull out of the ground, very low, something like a new technology, very high. Australia ranks 87th in the globe on that. So that puts us at about sort of the same levels like Mali, Cambodia, Zambia. And that's not to say that there aren't incredibly smart people in those countries doing incredibly important work, because of course there are. It's to say, though, that Australia has 7% of the world's top universities and only 0.3% of the world's population. So we're not really pulling our weight here. So part of what you will find in the Find Your Scale section is a variety of different kinds of content that you can choose from to try to figure out what you want to make the biggest possible splash out of your existing business. You'll have the opportunity to hear from experienced entrepreneurs like Malcolm Turnbull about their entrepreneurial journeys. And the spoiler here is that Malcolm says, don't be afraid of risk. He thinks you can do this. But you'll also have a chance to hear from young upstart entrepreneurs like Andrew Rakib, who's a co-founder of Maslow, which won the 2020 award for Best Established Startup in the UTS Startups community. So you'll find ways to fuse being profitable with being purposeful and a business that's valuable and also has values. And you'll also be able to learn a little bit about how technology can help businesses scale. But what I really want to highlight in this section is the people component. So I think that obviously there's a lot of great ideas out there, and there's a lot of really cool technologies. But one of the most important pieces of the puzzle to making, again, the biggest possible splash with your business is to get the right people in at the right time. And it's for that reason that we want to offer all you Sparkfesters the opportunity to find your co-founder, right? Never underestimate the power of human capital. So this is the one part of Find Your Impact that is going to be a live event. It's Wednesday, October 21st at midday. You'll be able to find it on the Spark Festival website under the workshop section. You'll also be able to link to it from the Find Your Impact experience as well. So what is this, who is this for? So maybe you've got an amazing idea, but you know that you don't quite have the technical skills to be able to pull it together. Or maybe you're a tech genius and you'd really love to be in a role that makes the most of those skills, but you're not sure that you yourself have the idea or that you really want to be a solo founder. And maybe honestly, it's just that being a solo founder is really hard and you would really like to have a buddy along for the ride. So this is an opportunity where you can find somebody who does the things that you can't, so that together you can be more than the sum of your parts. So how the workshop will work is that there'll be a little bit of an intro and some general advice about finding a co-founder and about co-founder agreements. We do not need any Eduardo Saverin situations up in here. Then there'll be a series of short pitches from founders who are actively looking for core team members to come into their startup. Would you like to be one of those founders? Fantastic. Email us at startups@uts.edu.au. So after you hear from the startup founder pitches, people will go into breakout rooms. They'll be rotated about every 5 minutes, and you'll have a chance to make your connections. Now, speaking of connections, it brings me to the final path of Find Your Impact. What would an ecosystem be without networks and collisions and mutual support? I think that this is not a zero-sum game. The more successful entrepreneurs we have in Australia, the more successful entrepreneurs we can inspire and, again, lift up and support along with us. So we've created an opportunity to connect to your friends, to your peers, and strangers in the innovation ecosystem. If you have an ask, fantastic. Make your ask for your startup. Or alternatively, you can make a pledge. Now, maybe that means pledging access to some of your expertise. Maybe it means offering a discount on your services to businesses that commit to a goal that's important to you. Or maybe it's just a pledge to yourself that this is the year that you finally start doing the thing that you've been talking about doing. So, what I would say about this overall is, again, the point is that it is interactive. Again, unlike this talk, it's not prescriptive. And that's because in life, we really do have to choose our own adventure. We're all doing it every day. That's also the UTS Startups model. We don't think there's one right path for every founder. And we don't think that we can tell people what the right choice is for their business. We do think that we can help educate and support and connect them along the way. So again, in the Find Your Impact virtual experience, you'll find videos, you'll find examples, real life examples, you'll find a virtual sketchbook. And I spent like 45 minutes on it yesterday drawing the Harbor Bridge next to the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm really pretty pleased with how it came out. So please don't disabuse me of that notion. Now, if you come out of Find Your Impact and you're like, I want more, I love this model, I wish I could join UTS Startups, congratulations, you can. We welcome community members who are from outside of UTS. You just need to have a UTS student or a recent alumni in your core team. I bet you could find one at Find Your CoFounder. Let's say, though, that actually you come out of this and you realize that really what you want is more structured skills development. Absolutely, we do that too. UTS really believes in the power of lifelong learning, that again, we're all going to need to access learning over the course of our lifetimes, and then it's going to look different for different people. So we offer everything from a full-on MBA that specifically focuses on entrepreneurship down to Australia's first full year Bachelor of Entrepreneurship honors, which you can come into from any discipline and any university and go on to do this as an honors degree. You can do micro-credentials. You can even do free online tasters in entrepreneurship. So it really, again, it's a choose your own adventure approach to your education. I think what's the take-home message here? For me, it's really that entrepreneurship can be for anyone. I think it's specifically because entrepreneurs have had such an impact on our lives and have really shaped the way that we understand and engage with the world in 2020. We've started to mythologize them a little bit, and I suspect a little bit more than they actually deserve. Seriously, if Elon Musk was so smart, he wouldn't have divorced the same woman twice. So they're not gods sent to live among us. There's no specific background you have to come from and no specific set of boxes you have to tick before you can start solving problems too. I think this really is an opportunity for us to build the kind of innovative, resilient businesses that are going to make the most out of Australia's really impressive intellectual capital. We have incredibly well-educated people here with strong business skills, and we are educating more of them at UTS every day. So we just need to get started. I think the time to start is now, and the place to start is where you are. So my final thought here, before I'm happy to answer any questions, is that really, so a colleague of mine is a facilitator for Lego Serious Play, which is where you take the Lego bricks that many of us know and remember from our childhood, and you use them to ideate and to build metaphoric ideas and solutions. And he says the number one most important thing to having a successful Lego play session is to have participants get their hands on the bricks in the first 5 minutes. He says otherwise people get a little hesitant, they get a little fearful. They're like, oh, I don't even remember the difference between a simile and a metaphor, let alone how to build one. But once you get your hands on the bricks, everyone knows how to build. And there's no wrong way to do it, partly because there's no single right way to do it. So we hope that this will be similar. Come in, get your hands on the bricks of entrepreneurship, and build something. Again, I'm Sarah Kinkle from the Innovation Entrepreneurship Unit at the University of Technology, Sydney. You can find Your Impact at uts.act/findyouриmpact. You can link to it from the Spark Festival website. You'll find Your CoFounder on the Spark Festival website. There is not an age limit to be part of UTS Startups. And in fact, the average age of our startup founders is actually sort of in their mid-30s, but we have people ranging all the way from teenage through to pretty much as high as you want to go. So no age limit, just that you have to have a UTS student or recent alumni as a core team member. Any other questions that I can answer right now? I have a colleague who is feeding them to me. And if not, I would just really encourage you again to get in there, give it a try, play around, drop in, drop out, and shoot us an email at startups@uts.edu if you have any further follow-up questions. Thanks so much for being here today.